Here in Stratford-Upon-Avon, the home of William Shakespeare, it is very difficult to escape hearing the name of Hamlet. Hamlet mugs and t-shirts are bestsellers in the gift shops. Quotations from the play adorn tea towels, diaries, pens, shop signs, books. The focus on this particular play by the tourist trade is just one indication of how important Hamlet has traditionally been to Western culture. Apart from the Bible, Hamlet is the most quoted work in the English language. Hamlet is a young prince driven to despair by his mother's hasty second marriage to Claudius, his uncle. Hamlet subsequently learns, from his father's ghost, that Claudius is the man who murdered his father. The story of the play deals with Hamlet's vow for revenge and the complexities of his relationships with others because of this vow. The exact date at which Hamlet was written is still open to conjecture. It was entered into the Stationer's Register in 1602, but it is known to have been acted in one form or another as early as 1599. The uncertainty surrounding the earliest performances is mirrored in the choice of text. There are 3 versions of Hamlet available to us from the period. As a matter of fact, the first quarto was probably published by an actor who had wrongly remembered the lines of Shakespeare's play. We're on much firmer ground with the 2 other versions. The second published quarto, billed as a true and perfect copy, is almost twice as long as the first, with clearly Shakespearean poetry. And then there is the first folio of 1623. This doesn't include 225 lines which are present in the second quarto, but it adds another 70. The play is regularly performed here at the Royal Shakespeare Company, and countless academic papers on Hamlet are researched, written and discussed at Stratford's Shakespeare Centre and Shakespeare Institute. Dr. Russell Jackson has worked as textual advisor on several Shakespearean films, including Kenneth Branagh's celebrated Hamlet. Professor Stanley Wells has been the director of the Shakespeare Institute for many years and has written countless books and articles on Shakespeare. Who better than these experts to attempt to define for us why Hamlet has become one of the most influential pieces of world literature?
Alas, poor Yorick, I knew him, Horatio. Fellow of infinite jest, most excellent fancy. Why, he hath borne me on his back 1,000 times. And now how abhorred in my imagination it is. My gorge rises at it. Here hung those lips that I have kissed, I know not how. Where be your jibes now, your gambols, your songs, your flashes of merriment that were wont to set the table on a roar?
It is amazing how influential Hamlet has become. It's been so widely used by other artists and been so popular in so many countries. It's a very complex matter of what's caused that, but I think fundamentally it's because it has the capacity to acquire a mythic status. It's become one of the myths of the Western world. And I think the most important reason for that is its preoccupation with death, quite simply.
Hamlet has stayed popular, and Hamlet has been so much performed and so much read and so much debated and so much filmed, because the raw material of Hamlet has in it something to appeal to everybody. The story's exciting, the fact that it deals with what you could call a personal problem in the context of a family, beyond that in the context of politics and a kingdom, means that it has lots of ways of appealing to people from different backgrounds for different purposes.
Tell him his pranks have been too broad to bear with, and that your grace had screened and stood between much hate in him. I'll silence me even here. I pray you, be round with him.
If I had to say what Hamlet is about in a single phrase, which is a foolish thing to do, nevertheless, if I had to do it, I think I would say it's about reactions to death. It has the great symbol of the ghost to start with. The ghost is the great question mark hanging over all human existence, the idea of another world where things started, where things go to. The ghost is ever present in Hamlet's mind and often in the audience's mind, and the play is constantly concerned with what we do about death, what Hamlet does about death, the way that the ghost died, the way that Hamlet inflicts death on Polonius, but also contingent deaths like the death of Ophelia in her madness, for example. And I think this constant preoccupation of the play with the way that people react to death is, to me, the most fundamental reason why it's been such an influential work of art.
To be.
or not to be? That is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles and by opposing end them. To die. To sleep no more. And by a sleep to say we end the heartache and the 1,000 natural shocks that flesh is heir to. It is a consummation devoutly to be wished. To die. To sleep. To sleep, perchance to dream. Aye, there's the rub, for in that sleep of death what dreams may come when we have shuffled off this mortal coil must give us pause. There's the respect that makes calamity of so long life. For who would bear the whips and scorns of time, the oppressor's wrong, the proud man's contumely, the pangs of disprized love, the law's delay, the insolence of office, the spurns, the patient merit of the unworthy takes, when he himself might his own quietus make with a bare bodkin? Who would these fardels bear to grunt and sweat under a weary life, but that the dread of something after death, the undiscovered country, from whose bourne no traveller returns, puzzles the will, and makes us rather bear those ills we have than fly to others that we know not of. Thus, conscience does make cowards of us all. And thus the native hue of resolution is sicklied o'er with the pale cast of thought, and enterprises of great pith and moment with disregard their currents turn awry and lose the name of action.
At one point in the play, the villainous character that I play, Claudius, says revenge should have no bounds. The issue of revenge comes back again and again to plague the tortured soul of Hamlet. Time and again he hesitates. Just what are the factors restraining Hamlet from taking his revenge?
If we have to think about what stops him, the most cynical answer to that, of course, would be the fact that Shakespeare wants to drag out a play, you know, that he has 5 acts to fill, and that's not an entirely flippant suggestion, I think, because Shakespeare did want to write about a lot of different things. He didn't want the play to end until he'd had the chance to write about all the other things that are in Hamlet. But I think fundamentally it must come down to scruples, to conscience. Hamlet refers to conscience. And also, I think the fact that he only finally acts as by instinct. He needs to come together, all his impulses, both logical and illogical, emotional and irrational, they all need to come together within him before he can do the killing without feeling that he's betrayed himself, that he's killed something important within himself. I think that's fundamentally why he doesn't kill Claudius until the very end.
One of the things about revenge in Hamlet is that a lot of people want to take it. And there's an extraordinary scene in which Claudius, who is about to be the victim of Hamlet's quest for vengeance, is urging someone else to take vengeance on Hamlet. Revenge should have no bounds. Well, revenge isn't a simple matter. If you've got any conscience in the kind of world that Hamlet's in, if you've any belief in God, then you know that God forbids revenge. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, and I will repay.
When, for example, he has the opportunity to kill Claudius in the prayer scene. Now, might I do it? Pat, he could do it then. But he doesn't do it then because he hasn't all come together. He's not all anxious to do it. The complete man would not be behind it. He would just be doing it in a coldly calculated way.
Now might I do it, Pat. Now he is a-praying, and now I'll do it. And so he goes to heaven. And so am I revenged? That would be scanned. A villain kills my father, and for that I, his sole son, to this same villain sent to heaven. Why, that's hire and salary, not revenge. No. Up, sword, and know thou a more horrid hint. When he's drunk asleep, or in his rage, or in the incestuous pleasure of his bed, at game, a swearing, or about some act that hath no relish of salvation in't, then trip him, that his heels may kick at heaven, and that his soul may be as damned and black as hell whereto it goes. My mother stays. This physic but prolongs thy sickly days.
The dark, unspoken undercurrents in the relationship between Gertrude and Hamlet occupy the very heart of this great work. To an extent, Shakespeare might be thought to have prefigured the work of Sigmund Freud. Freud, in later years, sought to unravel the part played by sexual feelings in the complex relationship between any mother and son. Psychoanalytical critics have argued that such Oedipal jealousy might be at the root of Hamlet's disturbing description of his mother's marriage. But is that really the case?
How now, mother? What's the matter?
Hamlet, thou hast thy father much offended.
Mother, you have my father much offended.
Come, come, you answer with an idle tongue.
Go, go, you question with a wicked tongue.
How now, Hamlet?
Well, what's the matter now?
Have you forgot me?
No, by the root, not so. You are the queen. Your husband's brother's wife. And would it were not so, you are my mother.
Nay, then I'll set those to you that can
Come,
speak.
sit you down. You shall not budge till I set you up a glass where you may see the inmost part of you.
Thou do. Thou wilt not murder me. Help! Help! Ho!
Down now, black death for a ducat death!
Me, what hast thou done?
No. Is it the king?
When Hamlet gets so upset with his mother in the closet scene, he is already in a pretty disturbed state. He has, after all, just killed. He has committed the act of killing for the first time in his life.
Thou rash, intruding fool, farewell, I took thee for thy better. Beastly wringing of your hands, let me wring your heart, for so I shall if it be made of penetrable stuff, if damned custom have not brassed it so that it be proof and bullock against sense.
What have I done that thou darest wag thy tongue in noise so rude against me?
Such an act that blurs the grace and blush of modesty, calls virtue hypocrite, makes marriage vows as false as dice's oaths.
What act that roars so loud and thunders in the index?
Look you here on this picture, and on this. See what a grace was seated on this brow. Hyperion's curls, the front of Jove himself, an eye like Mars to threaten and command. This was your husband. Look you now what follows. Here is your husband, like a mildewed ear, blasting his wholesome brother. Have you eyes? Could you on this fair mountain leave to feed and batten on this moor? Have you eyes? You cannot call it love. For at your age the heyday in the blood is tame. It's humble and waits upon the judgment. And what judgment would stoop from this to this? Shame, where is thy blush?
When Hamlet deals with women, he, to most people's mind, deals with them very badly. He deals badly with Ophelia, and he certainly deals very roughly with his mother. And in what he says about his mother's second marriage, her relationship with Claudius, there's something so vividly, graphically sexual that a lot of people have found that so disturbing they need to find psychological explanations for it.
So good night. But go not to my uncle's bed. Assume a virtue if you have it not. Refrain tonight. And that shall lend a kind of easiness to your next abstinence.
Oh, what shall I do?
Not this, by no means, that I bid you do. Let the bloat king tempt you again to bed, pinch wanton on your cheek, call you his mouse, or for a pair of witchy kisses, or paddling in your neck with his damned fingers, make you to ravel all this matter out. That I essentially am not in madness, but am mad in craft.
Be thou assured, if words be made of breath and breath of life, I have no life to breathe what thou hast said to me.
I must to England, you know that?
Alack, I had forgot. 'Tis so concluded on.
This fellow set me packing.
Some actors make him violent physically with his mother. And that's not just some kind of generalised misogyny or what have you. It seems to me to be something in Hamlet that he's brought face to face with.
And I think Shakespeare shows us that his own reactions to that killing are to throw him into an emotional turmoil. I don't myself think it drives him mad, but it drives him perilously close to madness. He certainly is in a very pent-up state when he gets to his mother's closet. And of course that is exacerbated by the appearance to him of the ghost. So I think that when he's talking to his mother, all his pent-up feelings come to the surface. It's a most brilliantly written scene, the way that Shakespeare contrives language to give us the impression that we're actually in the mind of a man is a brilliant piece, a brilliant technical feat.
Save me and overwhelm me with your wings, you heavenly gods. With thy gracious figure. Do you not come, your tardy son to chide, that lapsed in time and passion lets go by the important acting of your dread command? Oh, say!
Do not forget. This visitation is but to whet thy almost blunted purpose. But look, amazement on thy mother sits. Oh, step between her and her fighting soul. Conceit in weakest bodies, strongest works. Speak to her.
How is't with you, lady?
How is't with you, that you do bend your eye on vacancy, and with the incorporeal air do hold discourse? Whereon do you look?
On him! On him! Look you how pale he glares! His form and course conjoined, preaching to stones would make them capable. Do not look at me, lest with this piteous action you convert my stern effects. Then would I have to do with one true colour. Tears, perchance, for blood.
To whom do you speak this?
Do you see nothing there?
Nothing at all, yet all that is I see.
Nor did you nothing hear?
No, nothing but ourselves.
Look you now, how it turns away, my father in his habit as he lived. Look even now as he leaves out the portal.
This is the very coinage of your brain. This bodiless creation, ecstasy is very cunning.
Ecstasy?
Hamlet, as we have seen, treats his mother harshly. He's equally harsh to Ophelia, the young lady he supposedly loves. And this contributes to her eventual madness and suicide. Can his treatment of her in any way be justifiable?
Soft you now, the fair Ophelia. Nymph in thy orisons be all my sins remembered.
Good my lord, how does your honour for this many a day?
I humbly thank you. Well,
I don't think Hamlet's behaviour towards Ophelia can be justified, but hardly anything Hamlet does is capable of a simple justification. He's never completely right, I don't think, in anything he does. Towards Ophelia, he behaves quite brutally, but on the other hand, he thinks he's been betrayed. And as far as she's concerned, in the course of the scene, he seems to betray and reject her conclusively.
not I never gave you aught.
My honoured lord, you know right well you did. And with them words of so sweet breath composed has made these things more rich. Their perfume lost, take these again. For to the noble mind rich gifts wax poor when givers prove unkind. There, my lord.
Are you honest?
My lord?
Are you fair?
What means your lordship?
That if you be honest and fair, your honesty should admit no discourse to your beauty.
Could beauty, my lord, have better commerce than with honesty?
Aye, truly. For the power of beauty will sooner transform honesty from what it is to a bawd than can the force of honesty translate beauty to his likeness. This was sometime a paradox, but now the time does give it proof. I did love you once.
Indeed, my lord. You made me believe so.
I think one may say that Hamlet's treatment of Ophelia is understandable given his own condition, given his state of mind, the state of mind of somebody who has recently, very recently, experienced the murder of his father in mysterious circumstances, which he's desperately trying to unravel, combined with the recent remarriage of his mother to the person that we know, at least, is the murderer of his father. He's in a terrible state of mind.
Go thy ways to a nunnery, and quickly too. Or, if thou dost needs marry, marry a fool. For wise men know well enough what monsters you make of them. To a nunnery go, and quickly too, farewell.
Heavenly powers, restore him!
I have heard of your paintings too well enough. God gives you one face, and you make yourselves another. You jig, you amble, you lisp, you nickname God's creatures. You call your wantonness your ignorance. I'll have no more on't. It hath made me mad. I say we shall have no more marriages. Those that are married, all but one, shall live. The rest shall stay as they are. To a nunnery, go.
I think another important facet of Ophelia, though, is in the overall large design of the play. You see, Hamlet, the play Hamlet, is partly about reactions to death. Hamlet reacts to his father's death. Ophelia reacts to her father's death. She and Laertes react to her father's death. Now, the death of Polonius causes his daughter to go mad, and it causes his son to seek revenge. Now, in a sense, they polarize out two aspects of Hamlet's reaction to his father's death. Hamlet nearly goes mad. Hamlet certainly wants to take revenge, but Hamlet is a more complex figure. So in a sense, Laertes and Ophelia are simplified portrayals of certain aspects of Hamlet himself, I think.
The expectancy and rose of the fair state, the glass of fashion and the mould of form, the observed of all observers quite down. And I, of ladies most deject and wretched, that suck the honey of his music vows, now see that noble and most sovereign reason like sweet bells jangled out of tune and harsh. That unmatched form and feature of blown youth blasted with ecstasy. Oh, woe is me. To have seen what I have seen, see what I see.
Although any description of the action of the play gives the impression of a series of grim events, there is actually a great deal of humour contained within it. Does this tension between the comic touches and the obsessions with death account for the play's unusual popularity?
Here's a skull now, sir. I've lain you in the earth 23 years.
Whose was it?
A horse and mad fellow's it was. Whose do you think it was?
Nay, I know not.
Pestilence on him for a mad rogue. He poured a flagon of Rhenish on me head once. This same skull, sir, was Yorick's skull, the king's jester.
This?
In that.
Let me see.
It's a remarkable thing that Hamlet is the funniest of all Shakespeare's tragedies, perhaps the funniest of tragedies. The climactic comedy of the play, I suppose, is in the graveyard scene, which itself is a paradox, isn't it? That you have a really funny character, except that he's digging graves for dead people to be buried in. But that's only one aspect of a sequence of comedy which runs throughout the play. Shakespeare is constantly concerned, in other words, to permit a comic perspective on the tragic action that he's portraying.
As thus, Alexander died, Alexander was buried, Alexander returned to dust. Dust is earth. From earth we make loam, and why from that loam to which noble Alexander was convertist, may we not find it stopping a beer barrel? Imperious Caesar, dead and turned to clay, might stop a hole to keep the wind away. Oh, that earth, which held the world in awe, might patch a wall to expel the winter's flaw.
We should also remember, I think, that the most comic figure in the play is Hamlet. Hamlet is a wit. He's an intensely intelligent figure who is a satirist, and he satirizes, for example, Polonius. In the graveyard scene, he has more abstract satire of lawyers when he's talking there. He's the most intelligent character in the play, quite visibly, and intelligence often takes the form of wit and the capacity to send people up, quite simply.
I have heard that guilty creatures, sitting at a play, have, by the very cunning of the scene, been struck so to the soul that presently they have proclaimed their malefactions. For murder, though it have no tongue, will speak with most miraculous organ.
Hamlet, we might say, in a happier life, would have been the hero of one of Shakespeare's romantic comedies. He's the only one of Shakespeare's tragic heroes who might have been the hero of a comedy if circumstances had been better for him. And I think this is part of the attraction of the play, too, isn't it? That Hamlet is an intensely attractive man. I don't mean necessarily physically, he can be so physically, but he's attractive in the sense that he is introspective, which is always has a sympathetic side to it, but also that he's so articulate. He maybe feel himself to be inarticulate, but his inarticulateness itself is explored in marvelously articulate language by himself. And this draws the audience to Hamlet in a quite exceptional way, I think. So that the comedy within Hamlet is in itself an important aspect of the comic treatment of Hamlet.
I think Hamlet's got so much variety in it, and Hamlet, the character, has so much range and variety and vitality, that its appeal is hard to beat.
Now I am alone. Oh, what a rogue and peasant slave am I! It's not monstrous that this player here, but in a fiction, a dream of passion, could force his soul so to his own conceit that from her working all his visage wand, tears in his eyes, distraction in his aspect, a broken voice, and his whole function suiting with forms to his conceit, and all for nothing. What would he do, had he the motive and the cue for passion that I have? Why, he would drown the stage with tears, cleave the general ear with horrid speech, make mad the guilty, appall the free, confound the ignorant, and amaze, indeed, the very faculties of eyes and ears. Yet I, dull and muddy-mettled rascal, peak like John a dreams, unpregnant of my cause, and can say nothing. No, not for a king, upon whose property and most dear life a damned defeat was made. Am I a coward? Who calls me villain, breaks my pater cross, tweaks me by the nose, gives me the lie of the throat as deeper to the lungs? Who does me this? Swoons, I should take it, for it cannot be that I am pigeon-livered and lack gall to make oppression bitter, or ere this, I would have fatted all the region kites with this slave's offal. Bloody, bawdy villain! Remorseless, treacherous, lecherous, kindless villain! Ah! Vengeance!
Here in Stratford-Upon-Avon, the home of William Shakespeare, it is very difficult to escape hearing the name of Hamlet. Hamlet mugs and t-shirts are bestsellers in the gift shops. Quotations from the play adorn tea towels, diaries, pens, shop signs, books. The focus on this particular play by the tourist trade is just one indication of how important Hamlet has traditionally been to Western culture. Apart from the Bible, Hamlet is the most quoted work in the English language. Hamlet is a young prince driven to despair by his mother's hasty second marriage to Claudius.
In the context of a family, beyond that in the context of politics and a kingdom, means that it has lots of ways of appealing to people from different backgrounds for different purposes.
Tell him his pranks had been too broad to bear with, and that your grace had screened and stood between much heat in him. I'll silence me even here. I pray you, be round with him.
If I had to say what Hamlet is about in a single phrase, which is a foolish thing to do, nevertheless, if I had to do it, I think I would say it's about reactions to death. It has the great symbol of the ghost to start with. The ghost is the great question mark hanging over all human existence, the idea of another world where things started, where things go to. The ghost is ever present in Hamlet's mind and often in the audience's mind, and the play is constantly concerned with what we do about death. What
Ambles, your songs, your flashes of merriment that were wont to set the table on a roar.
It is amazing how influential Hamlet has become. It's been so widely used by other artists and been so popular in so many countries. It's a very complex matter of what's caused that, but I think fundamentally it's because it has the capacity to acquire mythic status. It's become one of the myths of the Western world. And I think the most important reason for that is its preoccupation with death, quite simply.
Hamlet has stayed popular, and Hamlet has been so much performed and so much read and so much debated and so much filmed because the raw material of Hamlet has in it something to appeal to everybody. The story's exciting, the fact that it deals with what you could call a personal problem in the
his uncle. Hamlet subsequently learns, from his father's ghost, that Claudius is the man who murdered his father. The story of the play deals with Hamlet's vow for revenge and the complexities of his relationships with others because of this vow. The exact date at which Hamlet was written is still open to conjecture. It was entered into the Stationer's Register in 1602, but it is known to have been acted in one form or another as early as 1599. The uncertainty surrounding the earliest performances is mirrored in the choice of text. There are 3 versions of Hamlet available to us from the period. As a matter of fact, the first quarto was probably published by an actor who had wrongly remembered the lines of Shakespeare's play. We're on much firmer ground with the 2 other versions. The second published quarto, billed as a true and perfect copy, is almost twice as long as the first, with clearly Shakespearean poetry. And then there is the first folio of 1623. This doesn't include 225 lines which are present in the second quarto, but it adds another 70. The play is regularly performed here at the Royal Shakespeare Company, and countless academic papers on Hamlet are researched, written and discussed at Stratford's Shakespeare Centre and Shakespeare Institute. Dr. Russell Jackson has worked as textual advisor on several Shakespearean films, including Kenneth Branagh's celebrated Hamlet. Professor Stanley Wells has been the director of the Shakespeare Institute for many years and has written countless books and articles on Shakespeare. Who better than these experts to attempt to define for us why Hamlet has become one of the most influential pieces of world literature?
Alas, poor Yorick, I knew him, Horatio. Fellow of infinite jest, most excellent fancy. Why, he hath borne me on his back 1,000 times. And now how abhorred in my imagination it is. My gorge rises at it. Here hung those lips that I have kissed, I know not how. Where be your jibes now, your